Hi, welcome everyone to our EMCR and Professional Development Seminar, focusing on what you need to know for career success. So my name is Tatiana Yanes. I'm a research fellow at the UQ Diamantina Institute, also ECR, based here at the TRI. I've been asked to chair the session today, which really we're focusing on career success for ECRs. So just for some background, Research Australia recently ran a survey of early career medical researchers within key faculties at two of Australia's well-known universities. From the data, they highlighted several issues, one of which was the need for professional development opportunities so that EMCRs, academics, are better able to thrive. Today, with the help of our guest speakers, we will look at opportunities available at UQ and QUT for TRI-based early and mid-career medical researchers to consider what they should prioritize for success in academia, consider options if they want to move into a career in industry, and discuss how early and mid-career researchers can juggle and navigate professional development with the challenges they face with heavy workloads and job and also funding insecurities. We'll have three presentations followed by a Q&A session at the end of the seminar. So please hold off all your questions to the end as well when we have the Q&A. So before we introduce our first speaker, I do want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connections to the land, waters and community. I pay my respects to them and their cultures and the elders, both past and present. So to introduce our first speaker, we have Professor Alistair McEwen. Professor McEwen is responsible for research development at the University of Queensland, including support for the development of ECRs. As PVC of Researcher Development, he has the responsibility for researcher training and development of academic and professional staff engagement with research. Prior to his appointment in 2022, Professor McEwen was Dean at UQ Graduate School from 2013 to 2021, and he continues a strong commitment to development and of postdoctoral candidates in his role as convener of the Australian Council of Graduate Research. Professor McEwen graduated from the University of Leeds and was awarded his PhD in biochemistry from the University of Birmingham. He has held postdoc fellowships at the University of Illinois and the University of Oxford before moving to University of East Anglia. Professor McEwen joined UQ in 1993, and he was the head of the School of Chemistry and Molecular Biosciences and then Deputy Dean of Faculty of Sciences. So welcome.
Thank you. That was a long bio, but it's really a real pleasure to be here for the second time this year. And what I thought I'd do, first of all, obviously, is to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, custodianship of the lands on which we're meeting. So I've been asked to talk about research and development and in relation to careers, and I'll give a perspective, of course, of what's happening at UQ, and hopefully we can probably expand in the Q&A about why we think it's important. But I think it really does matter. So we'll maybe park the investment in research and development first of all, and I'll try and describe what we're doing at UQ in relation to, I think, the link between performance and development. I'll say a little bit about social learning and career planning. I'll talk about something called the VTI Research and Development Framework, which we're having a soft launch at the moment, but hopefully that will interest you as a tool to help you in your development. I'll also finish by talking a little bit about culture, because that's at the heart of what it's really about, in my opinion. So I'm going to go straight into performance discussions, and many of you will have received, who are at UQ, will have received an email from the provost reminding you that performance and development, annual performance and development discussions are underway. And there is a new system up there with goal setting and other things. And in fact, I think it's really an improvement, because it certainly provides a lot more structure in terms of measuring those things and also the types of discussion. But too often, in my view, in the past, the focus has really been on delivery in terms of performance and not sufficiently balanced in terms of what a person develops from and what they get out of that and how that helps them in their career path. So this is a good time in terms of to be thinking about this, because you're all going into your annual performance discussions. So one of the things that we've changed in this context relates to how our supervisors, the line managers of ECRs, actually approach development of researchers. Traditionally, I think most people have just looked at delivery in terms of research, in terms of outputs and outcomes, whereas we don't think so much about the staff and the students who we're developing. So from now on at UQ, we have a fourth domain, which is supervision and researcher development. And that applies to early career researchers, HDR students, and students who develop through research. And we'll be asking the question of supervisors, well, tell us what you're actually doing for your staff and your students. So we'll be asking about, are you developing their ability to carry out responsible research in terms of the conduct of research, making sure ethics and authorship is properly understood. Capability and skill development is actually working with them to actually help people think about what workshops and other types of development they may wish to take. Engagement is about the outward-facing approach. If a supervisor has connections with industry or other areas, why not take along a postdoc so that they can learn and be part of those discussions? These are actually things that good supervisors do routinely, but what it is about raising the quality across the board in the future. So what this is doing really, I'm hoping, is that it's going to set some expectations for supervisors in the way they develop staff and students. And equally, I think from the point of view as a supervisee, it gives you the opportunity, I think, to ask for those things to be supported. So it's not just about how many papers are we going to publish next year. That's not what it's about any longer. So one of the things in terms of the discussions is how do we consider and frame the way in which we're learning from those performance activities, from the goals and from all of the other activities that happen. Well, UQ's adopted what we call a 70-20-10 learning framework, and 70% of that is experiential. It's the work that you're doing on the job in terms of the activities that you're doing. But how often do we stand back and reflect on what we've learned from those activities in the lab or the presentations or all of the other things that go with that? 20% is social, that is the interactions that you have with your peers or with other groups or through mentoring schemes and other things. And that also really helps in terms of improving one's perspective on the capabilities that you've got. And finally, there are workshops, which is the 10%, courses, other continuing professional development. That's known as formal learning. So what we're aiming to do really is how can we link those performance discussions to a consideration of what am I going to learn? The real question then, though, is how do you record or measure those things? And this is where the researcher development framework comes in, because what we're trying to do is build the concept of a researcher as a professional identity. It's basically a set of capabilities that a person develops through research. And that's why we go from honors students all the way through to staff in terms of building those capabilities. And it's a special type of capability, that research mindset that you develop. So we're partnering with Vitae from the UK, which is a well-known leader in researcher development. And they have something called the Researcher Development Framework, which is basically a set of capability descriptors which include knowledge and intellectual capabilities, which is the domain that we all value the most. That's identifies our core knowledge capabilities, but also personal effectiveness, how we what our skills are in management, and research governance and organization, which is also management, but also about managing people. And then the last part is the more external facing, which is engagement, influence, and impact. And what we can do is measure those capabilities and see whether we're improving through the actions that we've described. So this is a way in which you can describe those things. So we were adopting this, and we have a soft launch at the moment, and I'd be happy to talk about this later for people at the TRI. So this enables you to actually record in the researcher development framework. There's actually an online system whereby you can record those things. So this enables you to link performance discussions and goal setting to actually recording how you're improving as a researcher. So why would you want to do this? Well, it helps you identify what skills and knowledge you need. It helps you make informed choices about career development, and it allows you to take responsibility. So I'm hoping that this kind of approach will systematize the way in which we link performance to development at UQ. We also have a careers consultant, and this person is very skilled at listening to people and helping them tease out what they're really after in terms of their interests in terms of careers. And we've learned a lot from the sessions that they've had. So certainly that's available for staff at the TRI. And one of the things that's really important is they found out a lot about what really is motivating people or concerning them. And certainly precarity, work-life balance, and workload are really much on the EMCR eyes, and we really got to discuss how we can improve those things. But I think through these discussions, we can create a better system for people. I just want to finish by talking about the future. There are two things that I think are most important. We want to get more investment in research for researchers. That's one thing, and I believe that there are some people who are really thinking about that. And one of my favorite authors is Mariana Mazzucato from UCL, who really believes in this public-private partnership for more investment to basically drive a research and innovation agenda. The other person is Michael Sandel, who's written, I think, a wonderful book on the tyranny of merit. And what he's really saying is that meritocracies can also challenge people as well. It's in terms of success and failure. And we've got to stop thinking about those things and build a system which actually values contributions as much as it values distributions. And I think that's an important thing to think about. And if you're interested in a good read, I would certainly suggest him. Some universities are doing a great job in this space, and I would highlight the University of Glasgow as the place to look. I'll make these slides available. There's a couple of links there, well worth reading, and there's an eLife article from Tanita Kasky, who runs their policy, their system. The last point that I make there is that building a research culture, which is a positive culture, doesn't compromise research excellence. If you looked at the Research Excellence Framework, which is their equivalent of ERA in the UK, Glasgow did exceptionally well. So the two are not mutually exclusive. You can build a great research culture for staff and still achieve in terms of excellence. So I'll stop there and thank you.
Thank you, Professor McEwen. That's a great talk. Our next speaker is Professor Janet Davis, who is the Associate Dean of Research for QUT. Professor Davis completed her PhD in biotechnology at Murdoch University and completed postdoctoral training at Monash University and the Alfred Hospital. She's the Assistant Director of Research for Metro North Hospital and Health Services, where she develops strategy research, policy, and chairs the Clinical Research Education Program. The underlying theme of her research is antigen-antibody interactions. Her current work focuses on applied allergy research to improve diagnosis, treatment, and understanding of the immunological mechanisms underlying allergic respiratory diseases. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Sounds like you've just had a really excellent presentation from the previous speaker, and I wish I was here to hear the lot of it, actually. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about your motivations of why you're in research, more so than giving you tools, because I think those tools are available and accessible if you know where to go and find them. So if we look at the research journey, and the reason why most of us are in research is because we want to make a difference to patient outcomes or to the health system that serves those patients. And so we could have almost had this the other way around. The pathway where we making discoveries is the foundation to generate new knowledge. And then we're in a system that wants to take that knowledge as an evidence base. And I can see that there are a couple of pathways for translation of that knowledge. One is around, it hasn't shown up here particularly well, diagnostics, therapeutics, or devices. So actual tangible infrastructure or IP assets need to go through a commercialization pathway to get developed and translated into and adopted into practice. But then there's the other kind of knowledge and evidence, and that's about how we deliver healthcare, the systems and the solutions. And they might be less tangible IP assets, but nonetheless as vital to improvement and change, and as an evidence base for improving practice outcomes. So I suppose as researchers, we need to really understand who we are and what we want out of our research career. And where do we fit into that system? Are we more in the biomedical test or therapeutic or device discovery pipeline end, or are we more into the knowledge translation end? And that could have those two pathways. So I think understanding yourself and what it means to you to be a researcher will help you to set your plan and your directions and strategically pursue that career goal. So, and these are some shots of me. They're a bit old, actually, but that's top left is me out there in the field collecting samples to measure pollen in the air. And we're doing that. And that's me and one of my students down in the bottom. We're actually analysing the allergen components inside the pollen and the patient-specific reaction to those pollens, so that we have a family of IP assets around diagnostics and therapeutics. But being a researcher really you're doing a lot, right? And we're often very focused on the activity. But I think we need to step back every now and then and take a look at that whole journey and what does it mean to be doing research. And I'm going to show you in a little while a little schema called program logic. And even though we're doing research in academia or closely linked to the health service, we still need to be mindful that we need to provide the inputs, and that might be your fellowship or your scholarship, the people and the materials, to do all of these activities that we do in the lab, or we do as collecting data, or, you know, any kind of research, whether it's biomedical or qualitative or quantitative. And we're delivering outputs, that might be our papers and so forth. But our ultimate purpose is to deliver that impact. And by that, there's lovely definitions from NH and MRC around what impact means: impact on the health, economy, knowledge, or society, right? So there's another topic that we can look at another time. But often being a researcher means that you are teaching. Whether you've got a formal teaching appointment or not, you will be engaging in training other students as well, whether that's postgraduate or undergraduate students. And doing research depends on quality and research reproducibility. Again, could have another whole session on that. But it often means that if those innovations are going to be taken up by industry and developed, then that ability to demonstrate quality research outputs and reproducible research findings is part of that. So we have to be doing excellent research at all stages of our research, but we have to put that into the context of where we're doing it and why we're doing it. And for me, you heard that I was at Monash and the Alfred. So I was actually employed for 10 years as a research and then senior research fellow in the Alfred Hospital. And now, even still, I've been 8 years at UQ, and I think I'm 7 years at QUT now, but 6 years also in that role of Assistant Director of Research for Metro North Hospital and Health Service. So my meaning has been that nexus between academia and the health sector, so that we've got a pathway to understand how our end users adopt and apply knowledge into practice. But you've also got to be good at communicating, whether that's to your internal stakeholders, your boss, their boss, the dean, and so on, or whether that's to external stakeholders, your funders, the community, the other scientific audience. So you're doing a lot of things, but I'm prompting you today to think about, what does being a researcher mean to you? What part of it really matters the most to you? Because understanding your motivation keeps you going through. Because I think everyone in the room and everyone online who's been in the research system knows that it's a pretty tough gig. And we do suffer as a sector from attrition. We suffer as a sector from training people, skilling them up, and then losing them out of the pipeline as we emerge from early to mid and more senior researcher. So that means it's a really tough journey. And I really like that concept of merit and challenging that concept of meritocracy that Professor McEwen mentioned, because merit can sometimes be a matter of perspective. We're often accumulating a whole lot of metrics about what we've done and what we do, so we look great, but we're often not putting that into that context of what opportunities we've had and how we've been afforded those opportunities to deliver those outputs. So metric is probably very relative depending on opportunity. And our major research funders are trying as best they can to set up systems and guidelines to account for relative to opportunity. But are those systems really working effectively? So to be a researcher takes an incredible amount of resilience, agility, tenacity, intelligence, the ability to collaborate, and all of these wonderful positive words there. But nonetheless, it's a pretty precarious journey as a researcher. So I think understanding why you're in the research journey will help you find where you fit into the sector and how you want to pursue your research career. Then I suggest, skilling up. And I think that all of you here today and online are evidencing that you want to learn those skills because you've come to a professional development seminar. That's great. So we've heard that the University of Queensland has a lovely suite of opportunities for professional development, and every university will offer those. So rather than focus on what the universities offered, think also more broadly outside your immediate employer for development of professional skills and research resources, such as the Research Education Series from Metro North. Metro South will also have a lot of resources online as well to support the process of doing research, but also some of those research topics that you can access under the second one, the webinar series, and I'm happy to share these afterwards so you can go and have a look, has lots of things around how to write career development, how to write grants, how to prepare and manage your research project management and so forth, but also societies as well. And I've just put up the Australian Society of Medical Research and some of the examples of their topics about creating a CV, consumer engagement and effective mentoring. So look to your professional societies for opportunities for career development. Look to your universities, of course. Look to the hospital and health sectors where we work and who we partner with, because there's lots of opportunities there to skill up. And one thing that you will find is a much fuller description around research management. And I think I missed some of what Professor McEwen was talking about, but he looked like he had a little diagram that sort of thinks about what do you need to be considering when you're managing your research. So this was drawn from a presentation I did a few years ago, where you think about when you become a group leader, you're essentially running a small business inside of a university, okay? And if you think about your research team as a business, you've got to provide secure inputs, you've got to provide cash in an ongoing way to employ your staff, provide materials for your students to do their work, right? So you're taking on quite a large responsibility. But if you think about who your clients are, they're the agencies who provide you with funding. They are the clinicians and the patients who are the end users or the stakeholders in your research that you're doing it for, who will ultimately benefit. Your team, of course, is your staff and your students. And you as a team leader want to be able to bring the best out of each person in your team so that they're performing and growing to their maximum potential and delivering those quality, excellent research outcomes. And what are the products of this little business? It's your papers, it's your ability to supply and meet deadlines as well. So something I've done a lot of throughout my entire career is contracted research. In addition to NHMRC and ARC funded research, I've done a lot of work where it's milestone driven, where there's really close, detailed look at our Gantt charts about, are we hitting our milestones on time? Are we delivering what we said we were going to do? So holding ourselves for our funders to account against the milestones we said we would do. Now, depending on the where and how you get your money. There's more or less obvious accountability for delivery of your milestones and stated objectives. But ultimately, you do need to deliver. And we need to be able to provide resources. So that's attraction of funds through scholarships, fellowships, and grant incomes. So you need to think about this as you progress into that group leader role. And this is a little schema then of that program logic, where you need to think about the inputs, the activity, the outputs, the outcomes, and the impacts. And the arrows underneath there are really those internal and external factors that might be influencing your success or otherwise. I'm just wondering how we're going for time. I've got about 3 slides left. Okay. And so you need to sort of map this out, and having a really good overview of your total system and where you're going, not just your details of what you're doing this week and next week to get your research experiments done, but how you're going and tracking forward will really help you in that future thinking and that forward planning to manage your own career, as well as manage a specific project, as well as manage the team who's doing that project with you. So we're not often trained as researchers in how to do that management. We're trained how to be a good scientist, right? And as researchers, we kind of have to learn this along the way. And so what I think is really exciting is that we've got a room with people here at that early and mid-career stage, opening themselves up to that learning opportunity early on. And I think that's really a good thing for that forward planning. So there's a lot of literature around program management, not so much in the context of research, but it is a really good system to think about in your daily life as a researcher. So my last little topic I want to touch on briefly is that touches into merit and equity, and how merit is perceived. And if you are a female researcher, the data really shows that it's a tougher pathway. So even if you're a successfully funded researcher through NHMRC and succeed in being a CIA on an ideas grant, the average amount of money that a female CIA gets is only around 82% of the average amount of money awarded to a male CIA. So even though we can say the success rate is 13.8 compared to 17. And at the time I did this was from a couple of years ago, one of the executive deans was patting themselves on the back saying, oh, that's not such a big difference for men and women. But if you then go, well, actually, you know, you've got far fewer women applying. So there's less in the pipeline. The success rate is a little bit lower, but the amount awarded is less. Whether you're looking at on the left is the ideas scheme, and on the right there was the scheme for investigators. So women, when they're successful, get 80% roughly of the resources to pursue their research as a man does. So even when you're successful, and we can see that the number of applications drop over time, so there's less female researchers progressing through the different levels, success is even harder to maintain. So it's a compounding effect of continuous challenge. It's not insurmountable, but it is something to be aware of. And there's lots of reasons why that might be so. And there is now a really good options paper that was put forward for feedback last month from NHMRC. So I suggest you all, if you're interested, and I think this is, you know, this is not just a problem for, you know, women in research, it's a problem for the whole sector, because we invest an awful lot as individuals and as systems in training our researchers, right? If we lose that incredible talent, it's a waste. It's a waste of that human resource. It's a waste of the investment in training. It's a waste of the opportunity that those people really have to perform and do their best and have that opportunity to contribute. So I think it's not just a problem for women to fix. It's a problem for the system to address. And there are a lot of male champions for change who are also aware and cognizant of that need to fix this problem. But my advice that was given to me was, we do start out at the early career stage, roughly with similar amounts. So in fact, there's about 52% females at level A, B, academia, and it drops off as you go forward. So be mindful and extra careful of planning that research career trajectory, and be confident with contributing your knowledge, your skills, and your capacity as an emergent research leader. Don't sort of fall back into the trap of being the mum, the caretaker, the note keeper, the coordinator, the cleaner-upper, because I see that a lot. When a meeting's finished, the women will step forward to collect the glasses of water and the teacups, and the men will be having those last little networking conversations, tying up details and setting the next conversation up, right? As a woman in research, if you are progressing as a research leader, then you should be part of the conversations that are happening around networks and future decisions, just like your male peers should be. Just saying. And I got advice from when I did the UQ career progression for women training. I probably did it 2014. One of the male professors came in and said, it's great to be on an organising committee, but in fact, what you want to be is on the program committee, where you're setting direction, where you're inviting the speakers, where you're building your networks. And that he had a perception that being part of an organising committee had less merit than being part of a program committee. And I'd say for women in research, or women in any sector, actually, watch out for the glass cliff. I'm sure everyone's heard of the glass ceiling, where you get to a certain level and it's really hard to push up to that next level. But hands up, who's heard of the glass cliff? Do we know what that means in the room? It basically means that women end up getting offered opportunities where no man would go. And women are forced into taking roles in business. There's some, if you're interested, there's some literature I can provide you. We take on the difficult, risky roles, the ones that probably are very hard to succeed at. So you get positioned into a role that has a lot more risk associated with its success. And it's interesting, the different leadership styles and collaborative working styles between men and women. And often, women can get things done because they are a little bit more inclined to work collaboratively and collectively. So sometimes that actually can work out as a good outcome, but it also can be incredibly risky as a female navigating any sector of research, academia, health, or business. That's well documented. Anyway, plan to succeed. Be aware of challenges and barriers, but plan for success. And that's really what I want to say. The first part of what I said was know what you want, know who you are, know what being a researcher means to you and why you're doing this, why you're in the game. Then get your skills, find them from your university, find them from your professional societies, find them from the health service. Do that excellent research. Everything we do as researchers, or anything you do in life, you want to do it to the best of your ability. You want to meet high quality standards, and we want to have reproducible research and no research wastage. Lovely goals, but we have to then set that bar high, but manage how you get there. Manage your projects well, manage your group well, manage your career well, and plan ahead. I think know what your funders are looking for. If you're going to go for a future fellowship, don't sit down 3 months before it's due to plan what you need for that future fellowship, because they'll be wanting to see those emergent leadership roles. So that means if you want to write a future fellowship or a leadership grant through NH&MRC, what do you need? What do the funders want? If you need to be demonstrating leadership, you've actually got to have already been doing that, if you know what I mean. So get your line of sight on what it is you need, where you need to be competitive in a particular scheme a year or two ahead. Talk to your mentors, talk to your line managers, and see what roles and how you can be given that opportunity to demonstrate leadership. And that's where I think I want to leave you. Just know where you've come from, know what it means to you, and then be future facing and take those plans and make them into actions. And good luck.
Thank you, Professor Davis. Up next, we have Dr. Sandra De Pasania, and I'm so sorry I'm pronouncing it with my Australian accent. Dr. De Pasania joined Vaxxas in 2017, where she currently works as a lead scientist. Within the preclinical department, Sandra is leading her team to study diverse preclinical aspects of larger projects from bench to phase 1. Key tasks involve conducting R&D on existing and new potential vaccine candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so thank you for everyone to attend here this presentation. Thank you for the organizers to inviting me to come along. So very briefly, I will be covering some development opportunities, but also in academia, what to prioritize and some insight into the industry based on my background, which is covering 12 years academia with the teaching, training, postdocing, and 7 years in the industry now. So overall, like we've just heard from Janet, really nice. It's very important to complete your studies, but there's so much more than just studying. So it's really join the student, the staff associations, volunteer for various roles, but also be important roles. I've done secretary, treasury, but also president roles for different student and staff associations, which is very important to also get to know other people. Attend workshops and seminars, but very important at the end, like we just heard, don't stay back just to clean up, but actually have the 2-minute small talk with someone at the end. I was very fortunate, having done my PhD at UQ as well, that I had the opportunity with my research group where I was working at the time to attend a lot of grant writing seminars, to attend of the ECR, the fellowships, what to do, how to do it, and also plan well in advance and don't leave it till the last minute. During my PhD already, I've also joined translational projects as additional side projects. I supervised during my PhD the interns, the honor students, just assist them in the lab, which was great training experience during my PhD. But also like all the other extracurricular activities, and also do the fun things, not just work, but take the time out, have some drinks, have some barbecues, do the socializing outside, which is very important to gain these skills, not just for networking. But also, as it's written here, so networking, the mentoring, learn the elevator pitch. You never know who you might meet somewhere, whether it's at the airport, at the shops, somewhere in the elevator, is very important, because what you do is really like make it stick. Your exposure, your 30 seconds that you have with that person could be like a make it or break it deal, in my opinion. And very important, it's not all what you know, but also who you know. I think that's very important, just to be mindful, just be out there and get your name out there. So that's me in the lab. A couple of years ago, but it was probably 2 a.m. by the time I had to finish some important data for a grant. But in brief, so I'm from Germany. I've lived here for 15 years or so, but I also have no family relatives here. That is also important because I have 3 young kids, so life is very busy. So when we all say like, it's not all about work, make sure that you take time away and work around what is around you, collaborate with your teams, with your groups, with others, because you will really see that you can talk as working mothers, females, that you find others in the same position, and working together, it's really how you can achieve to get to the same goal. Now, English is my 3rd language. Again, that was also a big barrier when I came here, that other languages were much better than my English. So I had to literally study with my dictionary at the time initially. So it takes a lot of time, but I think with some dedication and also interest and having fun on the side, that was achievable. About myself, so I've done a PhD in biomedical engineering, but it dates back when I studied in Germany, biology degree, 5 years. And then later on, I did a Bachelor of Forensic Science, Toxicology, Molecular Biology at Murdoch University as well. And I followed on with honors in nanotechnology. So I did quite diverse areas because I didn't want to be super specialized in one field, but it also gave me a great opportunity to actually branch out, meet different people, and talk to people that normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to talk with. I studied at 4 different universities and worked at 3 different universities overall. I've only done 1 postdoc as on an ASC linkage, but again, the linkage grant was important because it gave me that insight into the translational work, but also working with the industry. I've been listed on several grants. I think it's about 7 or 8 as an AI, CI, CED. I don't remember because right now in the industry, it's not my priority. And overall, even though I've been in the industry for now 7 years, I've maintained my contacts through the academia. I have a fellow or adjunct position at UQ. So I'm also still supervising students. So I maintain that link. I give back to the academia to mentor some of the students, have them have internships with that. So really, it's very important to be able to see that you can branch out. And that's also maintained my publication records just growing, definitely not as big as other researchers, but it's just ongoing. Some of the things that I would like to give feedback just on is the academia, what to prioritize. And this is the feedback that was also given to me, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So always be one step ahead. Like Janet had said, if you want to submit a grant, don't write it 3 months before. You really need to plan ahead. If you're level A now, or even if you're a student now, look what you need for your level A. What do you need to achieve? And then plan ahead. Same, if I want to go for a promotion at work, I need to make sure that I perform right now already what I want to achieve in the next level, because normally people that get promoted to the next level are already doing the tasks at that level, not just the earlier ones. Have short and long-term goals. Know what you want to do in the next 12 months and what in the next 3 to 5 years, because just you know what you want to do and where you want to get to. So have a plan in mind. Publications presentation, that is from a senior fellow. That was the advice given to me. When you have a postdoc, make sure that you have at least 1 publication a year. There could be a lit review, ideally data paper, and aim for at least 1 big paper from your 1 fellowship, about 3 years. But also collaborate with others. It's not just about you as an individual, but work together as a team, because the more you assist others, then you can be on their publications. Therefore, your total number of publications will increase over time. Key skills, soft skills, teaching, mentoring, training others, memberships, join associations, be visible, don't be always in the background. But I know it also faces the challenges and the funding, the insecurities, and also the responsibilities, especially if you want to become a group leader. Then we have heard from Janet as well, that you have your staff that you need to maintain. It's like a little business to run. And I think for me, the key thing was really having a great team around me. It never felt like work. It really felt like just having a great time with others and having like-minded people around me. Okay, why industry? Well, everyone has their own preferences, and we know there's not one size fits all. So industry important. Why the job change? Well, it's not publish or perish. It's literally you have a job security once you pass that probation period in general. We all in industry, we have a common goal. For instance, at Vaxxas, where I'm working at right now, we all strive towards the commercialization. So everyone is pulling the boat in the same direction. We also have a more direct impact on the human health in itself. You have a clear line of sight that you know where you want to get to in this short period of time. Or you might just need a change of job opportunity. And I think it was good for me, for instance, that I also did the postdoc first before going into the industry, because it's very important that you learn that you've seen both sides, because it's much harder to go back from industry back into the academia. Does a PhD help when you want to move to industry? Absolutely, yes. Do you need it? No. So it really depends what you want to work in, because the key things that you learn in a PhD with the lab skills, the research management, documentation, some soft skills, all of that will be used as well in the industry. Challenges do we face? Yes, heaps and heaps and heaps. It's very fast paced. Very often decisions are driven by timelines and money, not so much on the outcomes that we actually study at. That can be very challenging for some people. We have very exciting new projects. We have 5, 6 at the moment ongoing at the same time, which can be also very challenging working on different things at once. We have a quality management system, so everything needs to be very, very tedious and explicitly controlled, recorded. And that is also not for everyone. So just keep that in mind if you're looking potentially into the industry. And they're just like a few of the other on the list, what you can see there that might be useful. Now, at Vaxxas, we have various different departments. And what you just see is just a snippet. So on the screen, we have the engineers, we have operations teams, formulation, analytical work, doing a lot of the assays. Myself, I'm in a preclinical team, working in a preclinical phase to the phase 1 development of the studies and assay development, the quality system, and regulatory affairs. So there are different opportunities per se what we have within the company that you can, with a PhD, without a PhD, to work in. And even if you have the same person with the same background knowledge, they can be in 2 different areas, because it's not always the technical skills that we look for. It's more the big package around it, like the soft skills. How can you implement it? Because I think the key skill that we all hope to learn in a PhD is transferable into something else, because you've learned how to methodically analyze, look into something, and how to make things work, ask the right questions to really break it down to then see how that works. So this is literally the end of my presentation. I don't have it here, but we do have positions open at the moment. So if industry is something you'd be interested in, either come to talk to me or have a look on Seek. There are a few positions available. And with this, I would say, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can I please ask that our speakers join the chairs over there? And I would also like to introduce Associate Professor Samara Hussain. Associate Professor Hussain has an interest in chronic inflammation diseases and was the first globally to determine that immunity can modulate proteins production in secretory cells, in infection and chronic inflammatory diseases. Samara has had a rapid upwards trajectory in research, evidenced by an extensive body of high-quality publications in well-recognized scientific journals. She has been awarded around 3 million in competitive funding and has won 17 scientific awards and has had her recent license into the UQ startup company, Jetra Therapeutics. Samara is a well-recognized speaker in the field and has delivered many international conferences and presentations. She now serves on the Australasian Society for Immunological's National Council as the Queensland representative. So that's the Q&A part of the session today. So I just think we can see if there's any questions online. So if anyone online wants to ask questions, please also pop them in the chat box. So just to get started then, I'll start by asking the panel just a general question. How important is professional development to an EMCR success in academia? And I feel like this has been touched on a little bit in the project. Sorry, I'm setting to the side here. But yes, so I guess just a starting question about how important is professional development to an EMCR success in academia?
Who else?
I can just go ahead. So I don't know if it's on now, but overall, I think it's very important. It's key. Is it on the microphone? Yeah. I think it's key that for everyone that's really looking into it, as I've pointed out, and it's never too late to start. It's never too early either. So I think it's just something that's ongoing and it's not going to stop whether you're ECR or later on. I think it's just ongoing development.
Yeah, I think it's formative of you as a person and in your career. I think I definitely did one of the ASMR professional days when I was down in Melbourne. I applied and did an Alfred Hospital Succeeding as a Manager program, which was a 6-month intensive management program. I've done one at UQ for career progression of women. I've done one for leadership in QT. I think it's just continued learning, and it's those soft skills that we heard about that you learn, as well as skills that you won't learn as a scientist that are necessary as you step up into managing projects, people, teams. I think it's really important.
I can just add to that as well. When I first became group leader, I actually went, and before I became group leader, I went and did a course about emerging management at UNSW, and I think it was again an intensive course for 3 months, but it was really good and taught me a lot of soft skills that I could apply to my group as well. So I think understanding where your gaps are, especially as academics, we don't really learn any management skills. So I think it's really important to at least have a look out for them. And there's several available at UQ as well that you can do for free, actually. So I would highly recommend having a look at that list.
So the only thing I'd add is that, yes, it's also about, it gives you a chance to actually to crystallize perhaps some things you think about yourself through discussion with others and things you would think you were on the right track about. Sometimes that can reinforce your ideas by having that context of a workshop or meeting people. So I think it helps build confidence as well that you're on the right track, and also bring back ideas that things you haven't thought of and add that. So having that dialogue and discussion is really important in terms of the way you've developed.
Yeah, that's a good concept, that concept of feedback to you as a person or a worker. A lot of those research or management training will include some kind of attributes or quality assessments. the Myers-Briggs one, has people heard of those ones around personality and types of ways of thinking and working. Anything that helps you understand who you are as a person and how you best work is probably going to be useful to you as a researcher or in any kind of career that you go forward for.
And I was thinking something that Professor Davis mentioned during the talk, and something that I have to say, I personally always think about the fact that, you know, as EMCRs or as you go into become group leaders, you are essentially running a small business. And I find, you know, my own personal experience has been, I did my PhD, gone in to do postdoc, research fellow, and you're very much being taught to do research. But there's a lot of that business aspect of things, of HR and finance, that ends up falling through the cracks. So I was just wondering if you get from the panel, if you have any specific thoughts or suggestions about, firstly, where we can find those trainings and any specific trainings that you recommend, but also how you can go about approaching the subject with your supervisor, because I appreciate that that can sometimes be a difficult discussion to have about taking time off or prioritizing some of that training over, say, postdoc roles.
Mm.
Well, I'll just say budgeting has been challenging for me. I'm not a budgeter, but my husband's a businessman, so he sort of taught me a few skills. And then, of course, go to your mentors if you can, just to understand and decipher what everything means. Like, I'm not good with numbers, so yeah, put up your hand if you don't understand, or if you need to learn something. There's lots of people around and mentors that you can reach out to that can, you know, advise you and tell you exactly what you need to do.
Yeah, I actually remember doing a module on financial management of research when I was with UQ, actually, and I think it might have been a level C kind of program. One thing we haven't talked about is the topic of risk, and that kind of does tie into financial management as well. And different people or different ways of working have different tolerance to risk. And if you think about doing research, there's really nothing particularly certain about any outcome that we plan for a research experiment, because we are generating new knowledge by definition. So we don't know all of the unknowns about what we're doing. So, you know, in my being in the intersection between the health service and academia, I see very big differences between tolerance for risk. And risk was, this concept was part of it, about it was linked and included in this financial training module. And at the time I thought, why do I need to know that? Why does that matter? But it really does, because you're embarking on undertaking experiments, you're employing staff, you've got to be able to follow through, you've got to be able to complete, you've got to consider what the risks are and against benefits. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I would like to add one more thing, and that is really, so number one, there are a lot of courses, especially if you're like UQ, even QT, there are courses available that you can access and they're free. And I would highly recommend you do as many as you can. Talk to your supervisor if you can have 10-20% even of your FTE available to do personal development, but it's also for the benefit for your group leader as well. So that's number one. Number two, if you can't find it for any reason, you should have also access to the EMCR committees in your schools, institutes, etc. And you can raise that there. So very often, having been on these committees myself, when we have people come and ask, look, I think that would be really important, I can't find information. This committee will actually go out and find people to give a talk, whether they're internal or external. They can make things happen. And I think that is a great platform where people, they can actually really provide you the insight, run a workshop course. We've done it for stats and R, like everyone needs stats, but it was like a good refresher how to use R. Like I wasn't taught how to use R. But it's just things like that, that if you give feedback to the committees, they can assist to make things happen.
Yeah.
So those things are available. And I think as Janet said, across nearly all universities, and certainly UQ has those things. I think workshops and think those things can help. I think one of the things is to remember, even if you are running a group, it's about the team. And I think thinking carefully about what the structure of your team is. I think there's a tendency across Australia to have perhaps too high a number of, say, PhD students in a group, not sufficient numbers of staff. And I think getting that proportion is important. I would say the other thing is that, you know, postdoctoral researchers, ECRs, are also there to learn, but loading them up with things that can help you is fine, provided it's recognized, and provided it's also part of the development. So it's about the team that you build as well. And so that can take a pressure off a group leader, but it has to be reciprocated in terms of helping the ECR develop themselves. And that's the message that we really want to get across, I think, that it's about not just exploiting people, that and most people don't. It's about actually making sure that you run a team that actually is successful and being generous in that respect.
Thank you. I'm mindful we're getting close to wrap up time, but I do wonder if there's any questions from the audience or for anybody who's online.
Thank you. I'm a PhD student, and this is a bit different to the questions we had before, but what I notice a lot in ACRs and professors and the postdocs in my lab is that they've done quite a lot of travel. I noticed that with you, Sandra, as well. And I was just wondering what your perspective was on how necessary and important it is to I guess, take up jobs around the world, and whether that's been something really important for you in your career development.
If you get the opportunity, definitely do it. I only came to Australia because I met my original mentor, Mike McGuckin, at a conference, and he recruited me and made me come to Australia. So I would have never been here otherwise. So networking is really important at those sort of conferences, especially in your field. So I would highly recommend it.
Are you talking about going overseas to do postdocs and things of that type? Look, Australian research is very high quality these days, and the, you know, the growth. I came here 30 years ago. The growth has been quite phenomenal. Our top public research universities are certainly world class. So in principle, it's not necessary. On the other hand, going overseas gives you a different perspective. There are different ways, different cultures of doing things. And so it is of value, but it's not essential, I think, is what I would say. The last thing I would say is that it's actually, I think, because we are quite remote still, sometimes it's really important to go to international conferences, especially for PhD students, because I think that's how you calibrate. You realize that you are operating at that high level, and sometimes there's a bit of reticence still. I think if you don't see what's out there, I think it's important. It's about calibration as well. Help see where you're at in that respect.
Yeah, but I don't think it's essential. I was lucky during my PhD that I went and had a 3-month stint in the Netherlands, and I was working there, and it was set up for me that I went and spoke at the Pasteur Institute, and I spoke in Lausanne at the Basel Institute, and I got to go to Oxford, and I spoke there as well, even as an HDR student. But for me, I went and took a job in New Zealand. I guess in that time, it didn't suit me personally to go and take postdoc role over in Europe or the US. And it is a typical thing to do. And it can help you, but I think it's more about who you're working with and that they're a quality researcher and they're respected in the field. It's about the doors that can open. You don't have to go overseas to do that and to achieve that. But yeah, the connections through conferences and the people that I've met in going to international meetings has been really, really helpful in finding collaborations, in, you know, getting recognition for your work.
Also for me, briefly, just I think it's not essential, but it's helpful. You get to meet other people, but it's also will help you. So if, let's say, you work in a group in here, if you've never been overseas, you don't know what they're going through being alone here without family support network. So it gives you a different perspective that you may otherwise not really fully understand if you haven't been in a position, but essentially no.
Thank you. Any final burning questions before we wrap up? No? Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending today. And thank you so much for our speakers and panel members. It was very helpful for everyone. I've been able to take something away from today.